She stared me up and down, as though to say, "This is a waste of my time. What are you doing here?" I mean, I was 16 years old, so to her I probably looked incompetent and just like a waste of time. Imagine yourself at age 16, standing right on the threshold of a grand opportunity. And all that stands before you, before you have that taste and that chance of going after one of your biggest dreams, is a test. I want to share with you a really short story about one moment that changed not only the course of my life, but changed how I perceived my identity and my own personal growth for 10 years after this happened. So I was 16 years old, and my dream was to get into the Faculty of German Language and Culture at the University of Adelaide. And I sent an email to the head of the department after just securing my scholarship to study languages to change my major to German. Now, at the time, I had only been studying German for 2 years, which was really uncommon and unheard of. And so I remember walking into the office, towards the office, and my heart was racing. I was so full of excitement as I passed through the halls of the faculty, seeing the works of students before me and what could have come, seeing kind of my dream unfold before me. And my excitement got dimmed very quickly when I entered the room, and I was met with a look from the head of the faculty. She stared me up and down, as though to say, "This is a waste of my time. What are you doing here?" I mean, I was 16 years old, so to her I probably looked incompetent and just like a waste of time. And very quickly her words showed me that. After I shared with her my dream and my passion and my excitement of enrolling in the faculty, she said, "Well, you've only been studying for 2 years, so I don't think your level's going to be high enough, but you'll have to prove it with a test." So as you can imagine, I was determined. I had this fire in my belly, and I made a silent vow to myself in that moment that I was going to prove her wrong. And I passed the test with flying colors. She never said anything to me for the next 4 years of my career at university. But what also happened when I made this vow to myself was I began to carry this heavy shadow, this weight with me wherever I went that really warped my perception of how I saw myself, how I approached my growth and my studies and everything else in my life from that point, from when I took that test when I was 16. See, I started to walk into spaces and see anybody who talked to me, any room that I entered in my courses, as I need to prove that I deserve to be here. I felt like such an imposter because everybody was older than me. Everybody seemed like they had everything together. And so I set out on this path of doing everything I could to always improve, to always be better than anybody. And I really got struck by these words from that head of the faculty that were words of deficit given to me instead of words of encouragement and of empowerment. And so how I approached my growth for the next 4 years at university and anything I did beyond that was from a place of deficit. And that's the topic that I want to touch on today. We're going to take a look closer at really what is the difference between self-improvement and personal growth, because there really is a distinction, and it all starts with how we look at these terms, how we define them, and what they impact inside of us, not only in our mind, but also in our body and in our actions and beyond. And so I'm not just talking about this from a personal perspective, but I'm talking about this, first of all, as somebody as well who has been down this path in my university studies I've been studying language and been interested in language and its impact on our world and our behavior ever since I was 6 years old. I mean, you can go and look on YouTube as well. I did a talk about how the quality of our language really impacts the quality of our life. And I've also been at the forefront, at the cutting edge of looking at this research within myself, with my team, and using all of that prior knowledge about my research in languages, my research in psychology, my coursework in NLP. I also studied neuro-linguistic programming, to use that now as a holistic business coach. And so this is really something that is a part of who I am. Understanding and exploring the impact of language it's in everything I do and in everything I am. And so what we're going to be looking at, and I really want to hear your take on this as well as I move through. So do let me know in the comments if anything stands out to you, if you're sparked by anything that I share, or if you maybe have a differing opinion. All of that is welcome, because I want to just share with you my opinions and my thoughts and my research as well that I've undertaken to look at this topic of, do we really need to be improved? Or are we looking at maybe our personal development in a little bit of the wrong way? So that's what I want to touch on today. And we're going to be looking at first, what sets these two things apart? What sets personal growth apart from self-improvement? And we're going to look at a little bit of the science as well. We're going to look at how these two terms, using the two terms, whether you choose to use self-improvement or you choose to use, personal growth, how actually just by the language that you use, it has a deep impact, even subconsciously, on how you approach everything in your life. And then we're going to also be looking at what are some of the consequences of one versus the other, what are some of the challenges that we could potentially face, and also what are some of the benefits. And I want to also share some additional considerations, and afterwards, really highlight, why does this even matter? Why am I even here before you talking about this topic, and why are we looking at this distinction between these two words, and why does it matter to you? And finally, I'm going to leave you with some powerful resources that are going to allow you to explore this a little bit further if this sparks your curiosity and you want to actually apply some of what I'm talking about into your life. So I want to start off by a quote from a psychologist who has done extensive research in the field of positive psychology, Kelly McGonigal. And she quotes essentially, "The words we use can change our brain and our body. And this has the power to change the entire course of our lives." So first and foremost, we get to understand that the language we use is really powerful. There is extensive research done on the fact that how we perceive ourselves, how we define ourselves, our inner narrative, and then the narrative that we use to explain the world around us really does impact our lives and our behavior. And there's been extensive research done on this as well, just like I shared with what Kelly quoted essentially from her own research. And I'm going to share a little bit more of that with you afterwards. But the key thing here is that it's been shown that people who use positive language and empowering language to describe their experiences also perceive more opportunities, they find more happiness and more fulfillment. So let's take a look at these two terms that we're talking about here, right? We're talking about self-improvement and personal growth. So looking at self-improvement to begin with, this term already from the get-go has a flavor of deficiency in it. It already kind of says and assumes that we are deficient, that there's something missing, and so I'm going to set out on this journey of improving myself. Just like I shared with you the story right at the beginning of how I approached my growth after I did that university test to get into the German faculty, how I perceived, my whole life essentially of what it meant to actually embark on personal development and this journey of, becoming the best version of myself. Because I think that we all aspire to do that, right? If you're watching these videos, then chances are you are somebody who is passionate about just evolving and growing as a human being. And so when we look at it from self-improvement, we're actually already thinking about fixing. Improvement, as I said, implies that we're deficient. So we have a tendency to maybe focus on our shortcomings. It's like you look at things of you having like this set of checklists, like a checklist of items that you need to tick off. And this is really where you find a lot of people fall into the category, I think at least, of chasing perfectionism, and then they become perfectionists, or this kind of unhealthy view of what it means to become a better human being, or what it means to really grow. It doesn't even have that element of growth in there. And I think it implies as well that we're missing a level of self-acceptance. So a lot of people that I've talked to, and also my clients who've come to me, and they tell me like, Lina, I have read a ton of self-help books. I'm really into self-development and self-improvement. And then we dive in a little bit deeper and we notice that they're actually really trying to bypass a crucial element that comes with their actual goal of wanting to, become the most expanded and empowered version of themselves. And it is accepting where they're at and who they are. And I skipped this for a very long time, so trust me when I tell you I know what this is like. So if you're coming from that space of calling your journey like a self-improvement journey, maybe you're feeling like you're just chasing this rat race kind of thing, like you're chasing something that is always just beyond you and never actually feeling fulfilled on the journey. And I think that as well, it skips a level of self-care, because if we're constantly trying to, improve ourselves and fill a hole of deficiency and trying to hide ourselves and, instead of accepting who we are, then we're really looking at this as a task to be fulfilled, as an objective, as something that, okay, when I achieve this, I'm all good, I'm done, that's it. Whereas when we're talking about personal growth, it already has a different feeling when I mention the word of growth. And we can think about it as well with this beautiful analogy of an acorn. So when you look at your journey of development as a human being as one of personal growth, it's like an acorn that develops into an oak tree. So if you didn't know, this is really fascinating. An acorn actually already comes with everything that it needs to develop and grow into a huge, tall oak tree. So it starts off its life already with everything it needs inside of it to flourish and to grow. And it has essentially the embryo of the future oak tree already in that shell at the top. And so it falls down to the ground. It needs the right circumstances, the sunshine, the wet leaves, and needs to be rooted into the soil. But once it does have that set of the right conditions, it grows into an oak tree. And so that's kind of the difference as well that you can think of when we look at our journey of being one of personal growth. It's about empowerment. It's about understanding that you're not deficient, but you're developing things and you have everything inside of you that you need. And we are just looking at transforming our life and growing, empowering ourselves. And we're setting off on this journey of knowing, that we have everything that we need inside of us. And so when we think about it, like there are certain considerations that come with, what happens when we call our journey one over the other. And so one thing is the source of your motivation. So just like I mentioned previously in my story, my source of motivation became those words of deficiency. Like, I need to prove that I'm good enough. It was the extrinsic motivation. And that stayed with me for a very long time. And so when we look at this improvement, it's like you're always trying to fulfill something. You're always trying to kind of, I think personally that it's almost like what happens when a lot of us maybe feel like we're imposters, It's because we haven't accepted ourselves and we think that there's something wrong with us, there's something that's missing, and so we're doing everything in our power just to try and fill that hole, just to try and hide that perceived deficiency. Whereas when we approach our journey and use the words personal growth, then we actually are coming from motivation that is intrinsic. Intrinsic motivation is where you're doing it because it fulfills you. You're going out there and you're reading these books and you're, expanding your knowledge or changing your habits and whatever it may be, because you are actually just led by your own curiosity. You're not trying to prove anything to anybody else, not even to yourself. You're more so seeking out to just discover who you are and improve, and in terms of, just quote myself, and, expand your knowledge base and expand who you are. But it has nothing to do with how you perceive yourself or your worth. And another really key thing to mention here is that there are numerous studies that have been done that people who set out to reach success, who set these objectives and these goals, not only in, their own personal growth, but in other areas of their life, they tend to not be fulfilled and to have a lot of issues like anxiety and depression come up. And it's been shown, for example, Daniel Kahneman's work is a really great example of this. There is a 2005 study published in the Psychological Bulletin as well that shows people who chase success actually are very often devoid of happiness. Whereas people who chase happiness or seek out goals that fulfill them and seek out to, make themselves happy. And of course, I'm not talking about happiness in terms of always being like, ha ha, hee hee, but in terms of just seeking out things that give them fulfillment, they actually attract success very naturally. And so this kind of brings me to my next point. When we look at self-development and call it self-improvement, it comes with this kind of obsession sometimes of being really outcome oriented and being kind of obsessed with, when I tick this box and I achieve this goal, then I'm going to be great and then I'm fine. Whereas that's not the case. Whereas personal growth, you're really approaching your journey of evolution as a human being as one of being focused on the process. And that actually brings you this feeling of more satisfaction and of more happiness, just as I mentioned, the quote by psychologist Kelly McGolligan. And as well, to mention some of her work here, she mentioned in her research that people who actually use more positive language, like, for example, calling your journey or approaching your journey with this aspect of personal growth, and who focus on their strengths. So they're not focusing on what's wrong with me, what's deficient, actually tend to be happier and more fulfilled over time, which I think makes sense. So finally, I'm a little bit biased on this point, but looking at it as personal growth is really important because we're approaching it from a holistic lens. And I'm all about holism. I've seen it in my own journey and that with my clients. So I'm a little bit biased, as I said. But when we look at our journey in that way, we're understanding that it's a holistic thing. So for example, my journey of whatever I undertake, whatever course, however I choose to expand myself as a human being, it's going to affect every other area of my life. I'm not compartmentalizing. I'm not putting a sense of urgency on anything, but I'm understanding and taking into account that my growth is going to impact any other area. So for example, when I learn something new, or when I'm really involved in shifting certain habits in my life, or I want to take on a new venture, I consult my partner as well, because my hubby is a big part of my life. And same thing with other things, I look at how is this going to impact my relationships. Do I want to, for example, go and, pursue my spiritual practice? That's something that's important to me. Knowing that this might not, make me money, or it might not be a goal that has any terms of any type of financial value, but it has value to me because I'm really clear on understanding who I am, what my values are, and understanding what I need for my growth. Whereas a lot of the time when we are on that self-improvement part and think that we're deficient, we can tend to just jump on trends and jump on kind of, what's the next best thing? Like, what's the book that everybody's reading? What's the, latest app that I need to download, etc., without consulting actually, like, what do I need? And so we're missing actually that element of where am I at, who am I right now, and what is necessary for my circumstances right now. So all in all, I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about this? What do you think about calling your journey, or like, do you sense the difference and feel it when you say like, I'm improving myself, or I need to improve myself, versus I'm on a path of personal growth? So we've explored in this video some of the aspects of what sets the two apart, some of the science behind it as well, and how using the two different terms actually shapes our perception of our life and shapes our understanding of where we're headed in life and every action that we take. So I think personally that's also a really important aspect to consider. And one final thing that I really wanted to share, you can think of this example, like this is stuff really subconsciously, like in your subconscious mind. So if you've ever done that experiment where, if you were to look around the room right now and I would tell you, okay, look for everything like that you see that's green. So you went and you look around your room right now, where do I see the green things? And now I want you to tell me, how many red items did you see? You're like, what? You probably won't be able to recall many because your mind was so fixated on looking for the green things. That's where your thoughts were at. And so it's the same thing that happens as well with our inner narrative and our story and the language we use. If we use positive language, we're going to be more likely to look for opportunities and more, experiences that are going to be beneficial to you and fulfilling. If you're approaching it with this negatively skewed language of deficiency, of I need to be improved, then likewise, you're going to attract those types of experiences into your life. And so we also talked about, what are some of the consequences, as I just mentioned, and some extra considerations to take into account when we are, approaching our personal development in that way. And so finally, I want to share with you a really powerful resource that has actually helped me a lot in exploring this for myself and has been a really key tool in my own journey. And it's the book by Christina Montlakiani, who is the co-founder of Mind Valley, Becoming Flawesome. And you might have seen I did an interview with Christina where we dove into the book a little bit more, so you can check that out on YouTube as well. And I also have a blog that goes deeper into what I've talked about today in exploring this concept of you don't need to be improved. And this book really has also been life-changing for me in understanding how to befriend myself a little bit more, how to be more accepting as well of my own journey, and moving forward, how to really embrace everything that I am and everything I've experienced, to be able to take that and be just more powerful and more confident in moving forward. So all of that is going to be in the blog as well. I'm going to include Christina's book in there also, so you'll see the link for that down below. And ultimately, I want to just mention one key thing about all of this. Whether you call it self-improvement or you call it personal growth, what really matters at the end of the day is the connotation behind it. It's what belief do you have when you're on your journey? To have the belief of your inherent worth and limitless potential at the center. So it doesn't matter which words you're using, as long as we understand that we are limitless and we have boundless potential to achieve and become whoever we want to become, and we don't need to do anything to prove our worth to ourselves nor to other people, then that is really the key element. And so all of this, the tools that I just shared with you, the blog that you're going to be able to read, and this book that I also read, really helped me to find my path back to myself. And ultimately, I think that is what our journey of personal development is all about. It's finding our path back to our truest, most innate nature of who we are before we were blocked with all the things that we learned and were conditioned by. So thank you for watching. I can't wait to see you in my next video. And remember, be kind, be you, and be blessed.